I never used to believe in haunted objects. You know, dolls, paintings, jewelry, all the stuff you see in movies or read about on the internet. I thought it was all urban legend, or maybe just people looking for attention. But then last summer, my family moved into a house with an attic. And in that attic, I found a doll that changed everything I ever thought I knew about the supernatural. This is my story of the haunted doll in the attic. It was early June when we moved into the old house on Willow Lane. My parents had been saving for years, and when they finally landed their dream place, we were all excited. The house was classic Victorian, 3 stories high, with creaky wooden floors and tall arched windows. The kind of house you'd expect to see in a black and white photograph. Maybe a bit run down, but charming all the same. The first few days were a blur of unpacking boxes, arguments over who got which room, and exploring every nook and cranny of the house. I was 13 at the time, old enough to want a little independence, but young enough to be spooked by the unfamiliar noises at night. The floorboards popped and groaned, especially upstairs, and there was always a faint smell of must and lavender, like the house was holding on to old secrets. One afternoon, I wandered into the hallway at the top of the stairs. That's when I noticed a thin, almost hidden door set into the wall, much smaller than the others, with a rusty brass handle. When I pulled it open, a draftlet of cold air brushed past my face, making me shiver. Staring into the darkness, I realized it was the entrance to the attic. Most kids would have turned around, but curiosity got the better of me. I climbed the rickety staircase, the steps creaking with every move. The air grew colder with each step. At the top, the attic was dimly lit by a single grimy window. Cobwebs stretched across old dusty trunks and boxes that looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. I started poking around, brushing away dust and peeking inside boxes. Most of it was junk. Old clothes, faded photographs, broken furniture. But in the far corner, propped against the wall, was an antique wooden chest with ornate carvings. It almost seemed out of place, too beautiful to be left in the attic. The lock was broken, so I eased the lid open. Inside, surrounded by yellowed lace and rotting fabric, was a porcelain doll. She wore a delicate white dress, now stained and moth-eaten, and her glass eyes were an unsettling shade of pale blue. Her hair was tangled, but her face was perfectly preserved, almost lifelike, with rosy cheeks and a little painted smile. I reached out and picked her up, shivering as her cold porcelain seemed to suck the warmth from my skin. For a moment, I could have sworn I felt a pulse, a faint electric jolt, shoot up my arm. I brought the doll downstairs to show my mum, hoping she'd know something about it. She barely glanced at it before telling me to put it back in the attic. "That's just old junk," she said. "Leave it where it belongs." I should have listened. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured the doll's face, those glassy eyes, staring at me from the darkness. At some point, I convinced myself it was just my imagination and drifted off. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a faint tapping sound. It was soft, rhythmic, almost like fingernails tapping on wood. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and listened. The sound seemed to be coming from the attic, directly above my room. I lay there, paralyzed, until the tapping finally stopped. In the morning, I tried to tell myself it was just the house settling, or maybe a squirrel on the roof. But over the next few days, things started to get weirder. I'd find my bedroom door slightly open in the morning, even though I knew I'd closed it. My little brother, who was only 6 at the time, started complaining about the girl in the white dress who watched him from the hallway at night. My mum laughed it off as a bad dream. One night, as I passed by the attic door, I heard a faint giggle, a child's laugh, echoing in the darkness behind the door. My blood ran cold. I turned the handle and opened the attic, but the stairs were empty. The doll was still in the chest where I'd left her, but she seemed different. Her head was tilted at a strange angle, and her smile looked a little wider. A week later, my parents went out for dinner, leaving me to watch my brother. He fell asleep early, so I went upstairs to finish a book. As I passed by the attic door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. I knew I'd closed it earlier. I pushed the door open and climbed the stairs, flashlight in hand. The attic was even colder than usual, and I could see my breath in the beam of light. I shone the flashlight around and gasped. The doll was no longer in the chest. Instead, she was sitting on the dusty floor, facing the attic door, as if she was waiting for me. Her head was tilted to one side, her dress neatly arranged, and her glass eyes seemed to gleam in the darkness. I wanted to run, but something compelled me to pick her up and put her back in the chest. My hands shook as I closed the lid and backed away. As I reached the stairs, I heard a faint, sing-song voice. "Don't leave me alone." I spun around, but the attic was empty. My heart hammered in my chest as I ran down the stairs, slamming the attic door behind me. From that night on, I started having nightmares. I'd dream of being trapped in the attic, the doll's glass eyes following me as she crawled across the floor, her painted lips whispering my name. Sometimes, I'd wake up to find my bedsheets twisted into knots, or the faint scent of old perfume lingering in the air. My brother's nightmares grew worse too. He started sleepwalking, always ending up at the attic door. My parents tried everything. Nightlights, dream catchers, even moving his bed to another room. Nothing worked. One evening, while my parents argued downstairs about moving out, I heard my brother scream. I raced up the stairs and found him standing at the attic door, eyes wide with terror. "She wants me to play with her," he sobbed. "She says she's lonely." That was the final straw. I decided I needed to get rid of the doll, no matter what. I waited until my family was out of the house the next day. Armed with gloves and a garbage bag, I crept into the attic. The air was icy cold, and the shadows seemed to twist and writhe in the corners. The doll sat in front of the chest again, her blue eyes locked on mine. I grabbed her, shoving her into the bag, and ran out of the attic, barely able to breathe. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard a faint giggle echo behind me. I stuffed the bag into the outside garbage bin and slammed the lid. That night, the house felt quieter. No tapping, no giggles, no nightmares. But the peace didn't last. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of soft scratching at my bedroom door. At first, I thought it was the cat, but then I heard the familiar, childlike giggle. The next morning, the doll was back in the attic, sitting in her usual spot, her dress cleaner than ever. Desperate, I decided to find out where the doll had come from. I started with the local library, digging through old newspapers and records. It took days, but I eventually found an article from the 1940s about a girl named Clara who had lived in the house. Clara was an only child, described as quiet and withdrawn. She disappeared one winter, never to be found. Her parents moved away soon after, but neighbors reported seeing a little girl in a white dress playing in the attic window long after the house was abandoned. One photo in the archives showed Clara holding a porcelain doll. My doll. The same dress. The same cold blue eyes. That night, I lay awake. The puzzle pieces clicking into place. I realized the doll wasn't just haunted. It was a vessel, a link to Clara's restless spirit, trapped in the house for eternity. I knew what I had to do. Armed with salt, sage, and a friend who believed in the supernatural, I returned to the attic. We formed a circle around the doll and started reciting a cleansing prayer, sprinkling salt and burning sage. The air grew thick, the shadows swirling faster. The temperature dropped until I could see my breath cloud in front of me. Suddenly, the doll's head jerked and the attic filled with a deafening wail, a child's scream of rage and sorrow. The doll trembled, her eyes rolling back, her smile twisting into a grimace. My friend shouted for Clara to move on, to let go of her pain. We both felt a sudden gust of wind whip through the attic, scattering the salt and extinguishing the sage. Then, as quickly as it started, the noise stopped. The doll slumped to the floor, cracked from head to toe. The air felt lighter, the attic brighter. We buried the doll in the backyard, marking the spot with wildflowers. We moved out soon after. The new owners never reported any strange occurrences. Sometimes I still dream of Clara, but she seems at peace, her blue eyes soft, her smile no longer twisted. I don't know if I believe in haunted objects even now, but I do know one thing. If you ever find an old porcelain doll hidden away in a dusty attic, leave it where it is. You never know what or who might be waiting for you. We hope you enjoyed this true Reddit story. What would you do if you found a doll like that? Let us know in the comments. This has been Truth is Terror. Until next time, sleep well.